something interesting is sure to happen. Well, I think you ought to tell me who you are first. Mr. Rabbit? Then why did you ask the question?
Goodness, this is quite extraordinary.
Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here?
But today is turning into the most curious adventure I have ever had.
Welcome to the Alice in Wonderland podcast. This is a place for you to open your mind and let your sense of wonder, imagination, and most importantly, curiosity loose. So I'm your host, Georgia Ellis, and today I'm joined by the amazing, and I'm going to put in brackets, millennial, because this is how I met her, Tenille Gilbert. So Tenille she's the CEO of Society Melbourne, and she's a passionate believer in the power of young people to make a difference through social change. So let's get curious with Tenille. Welcome, Tenille.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Georgia.
My absolute pleasure. So just a little bit of background on how I met you and why you're here, and then I'm going to ask you a question. So for our listeners, I recently was chairing an event, a Women in Leadership event, and we had an amazing panel of millennials talking about what they were doing in the world in relation to leadership and leading change through social enterprise and some business startups that are making a real difference. And I was really impressed by the panels. And Tenille was on that panel, and I really wanted to go a bit deeper because we didn't have a chance on the panel about what it is she actually does in her social enterprise and how she got into that. So we're going to hopefully go down that rabbit hole with Tenille today. But before we do, Tenille, I've got a question for you. Now,
Sure.
I ask this to all of my guests, and it's a very, very simple question, but it goes along the line of the story of Alice in Wonderland. So I'm assuming you are familiar with that story of Alice tumbling down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
She meets all these amazing people as she's going through Wonderland. So I want you to imagine that I'm 7-year-old Ellis and I'm walking through Wonderland and I bump into you. You're there doing your thing in Wonderland, and I say, "Hey Tenille, what is it that you do?" How would you answer? How would you describe what it is you do to a child?
To a child. Okay. That's a good test. I hear that's always a good test for whether you can describe your thing well. I'll give it a shot. So I run hospitality businesses, so cafes. We do crepe vans, so we sell crepes, and a coffee cart. And what we do is we try to make money so that we can help young people who are experiencing homelessness. So we help them, we give them jobs, we give them training, and we provide a community where these young people can feel at home and supported.
Wow. So can you imagine a young child hearing that and being inspired by what you do? Not only a young child, but somebody, an adult like myself, who's a generation, I think, or two, maybe above you, if we talk about generations. So it's a really great social enterprise that you're running here. So my first question is for you is, well, what got you into this? Why did you decide to do this type of social enterprise, helping these type of people? What was the instigator?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I guess for me, it's just, I always describe it as something that's just always been inside of me, this kind of need to be involved in something bigger than myself, and to be involved in social justice and in helping others in whatever way I can. And yeah, it's just always been there. I often try and kind of pinpoint where it was in my childhood or in my teens that became a real kind of spark, but I'm not quite sure yet. I'm still exploring where that exactly came into play. But for me, kind of along that journey, I did a whole lot of volunteering in all different areas. I studied international studies, community development, and I did a kind of a 6-month trip to India where I did a lot of volunteering there, thinking that was something that I would be quite interested in doing. thinking that community development in developing countries was potentially my calling. What I found was that probably wasn't the case. I really struggled with a lot of the, I guess, moral issues there of working in a community that's not your own, and trying to enforce those Western values and ideas of how we think that things should be. And I, through international studies, really discovered that wasn't all that was made out to be. I guess that there were a lot of underlying issues in the way that we're addressing problems, I think, in developing countries. So for me, with the experience and the skills that I had, I didn't feel comfortable kind of continuing to go down that path, at least at the moment, and thought that I would be able to do more good in my own community, more or less. So I came home and I basically just saw the ad for what was to be Crates for Change, and they were crowdfunding at the time for our first crate van. And I just sent Dan, our founder, an email and said, what can I do? Can I get involved? So it was really as simple as that. I was in the right kind of network or community at the time to, see that at its early stages. I'd heard of social enterprise. I really didn't understand that much what it was. I just thought it might be a nice alternative to this kind of charity-based model, which I had studied a bit and, and worked or volunteered within. So I just jumped on board and was like, yep, we need some help. It was a bit of a jack of all trades role at the time. So just whatever happened. We raised enough money to buy the van and to get Crates for Change started. And from there it's kind of just been a very similar experience. I figured that I love social enterprise now, so I started to really understand what it all meant. Being in the startup world, I think it's a very unique world, and I'm not sure how I'd go in like a regular, established business now that I'm so used to the kind of hectic life of a startup. And just I jumped through a whole lot of roles. We've grown since then. We're now 3 social enterprises under our social enterprise umbrella. I've just been lucky enough to continue to be a part of it for a bit over 3.5, almost 4 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
You must have started when you were like 12 years old or something.
Yeah. I wasn't very old. None of us were though. So,
and there's a couple of things that come out of what you're saying there that I'd just love to go down. So we'll see how many rabbit holes we can go down with you. So the first one is, a lot of people now, a number of years ago, I didn't even fully understand what social enterprise was. So I'm going to make the assumption that some of our listeners may not be fully aware of what it entails to be a social enterprise. So can you just elaborate a little bit more, because you've been on that journey yourself? What makes a social enterprise different to, say, a charity, and how does it work?
Yeah, sure. I think, it's a really good point, because it's interesting how many people I come across who still don't, or, who don't yet know what a social enterprise is. The way I describe it is basically that we run a business and we use a business model and with business principles, but we do so to generate a profit that then creates an impact, so that we use to then invest into our impact. We have a social purpose at our core. That's integral to how we run. So I think that I know that in Victoria at the moment, they're actually trying to come up with a definition of social enterprise that is across the board, but we're not there yet. So there's a few different kind of, people would have different understandings of how it works, but generally, you either have the profit that you put into your programs, or you employ people from disadvantaged groups. So we do that one as well. Or you have a social or environmental activity that you run that basically creates that change as well.
So out of those streams, you're in 2 of them. So you're employing people in the enterprise, the disadvantaged. So in this case, homeless.
Yes. Youth homeless.
And then the profits that you make, what do you do with the profits? What's the part that you do that gives back through the profits that you make?
Yeah. So what we do is we actually invest our profits into something called the post-FOIA flexible fund.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful, which is run by Launch Housing. So Launch Housing are our major partners, one of their kind of biggest homelessness support providers in Victoria. And they had this project kind of just sitting on their desk going, we need some funding for this, but it's a new project and no one wanted to jump in and fund it. And we said, look, we'd love to fund something that's new, something that's innovative. And yeah, this for us ticked a lot of boxes. So basically what it is when young people leave supported accommodation with Launch Housing. So these are young people who have experienced or at risk of homelessness. And they're often in that support housing for kind of 6 to 24 months. At the end of that time, that's when the Launch Housing were noticing a lot of issues, because obviously the transition phase wasn't really there as to how do we then keep them out of the homelessness cycle, rather than just going, well, you've had your time, and if you didn't work yourself out in that time, then bad luck, move on. So we fund a 12-month program where these young people enter into the private rental market, and they're supported on it's a step down process. So we start by paying 80% of their rent all the way down across the 12 months until they're paying 100% of their rent. And it just is about really giving them that opportunity to take the time to understand how they can, be independent, how they can look after or pay for their necessities. To give them time to sort themselves, into a place where they can become independent. And it's been awesome. It's had 100% success rate. So every young person that's gone through that program after the 12 months has maintained their housing, which is huge.
Yeah, that's amazing. So aside from the financial assistance you're giving them to pay their rent, is there anything else you're doing for them? Because you say it's a 12-month program. And as soon as you said program, my background is, personal development. That's what program
is.
Is there any other type of help you're giving them from more of a potentially a mindset self-awareness piece, so that they don't fall back? The money's one thing, managing the money, but there's also what's going on the inside. So is there a part of that goes on in there too?
Yeah, for sure. So it links in either as a back end of our training program. So we also run the training and employment program. And that program has a lot more to do with, okay, how can we really set you up so that you, and building confidence, kind of as you mentioned, it's one of the biggest things that we can do for our young people, and creating a sense of community. So, a lot of people, when they're trying to exit the homelessness cycle, they continue to be pulled back into it because they don't have that community of support. Their community of support is still within others who are experiencing homelessness. So we provide those things along with the training and employment to make sure that they know basically that they can be valued, that they can go into a workplace, and that they can do something, they can contribute to that workplace, which is a massive is massive for them in terms of confidence in particular. In the post-FOIA flexible fund, Launch continue to provide support to the young people throughout that time. So it kind of all comes hand in hand. Like, what's really important to us is that we don't have kind of social workers or youth workers in our team. We actually rely on Launch Housing and on Melbourne City Mission, one of our other partners, to provide that support. So we're really big on individualized support and holistic support. So we can't expect them to just go out and here's the way to manage some money, but actually here's the way that you can know that you are valuable, that you can have confidence in yourself, that you can have people who are always going to support you. So we see it's a massive problem, and it requires a pretty full-on hands-on solution.
Yeah, and what a great impact you're making. So 100% success rate so far to date. So that is great, because I remember Melbourne's Lord Mayor Sally Capp. One of the things she mentioned, that what they're doing for Melbourne, what she wants to do is reduce the amount of homelessness in Melbourne. So groups like yours and social enterprises like yours are, you're not waiting for local government to kick in and say, I want to do something. You're actually out there doing it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's almost where I see a lot of social enterprises fitting in, is saying, you know what, we can't wait any longer. This is happening right now. And that's, the way that we're going to approach it, is we're going to do something about it now. Yeah, so we're lucky that we have, good partners, and hopefully, who knows, the government will put in as well.
That'd be nice. Are you noticing a difference? Because this is stemming from the panel discussion that we had, and the panel was a lineup of millennials, and I was super impressed afterwards, because we hear a lot out there that, that this younger generation don't care. They're all about material possessions, and that they're lazy, or they want everything given to them on a silver platter. I've never believed that, but you guys, when I say guys, because there was a group of you, when you were talking, it actually made me realize that you've got so much more power and influence than what we're giving you credit for as older generations. So are you noticing with some of the social enterprises, is it more of the younger generation starting these up?
Yeah, definitely.
Why do you think that is?
It's an interesting one. So I actually work, and I'm sitting here at the Foundation for Young Australians, and I work out of a spot here called the Hub. And the Hub is basically filled with young social entrepreneurs. And I think I actually have been reflecting on that panel discussion about the millennials, and the discussion of the snowflake generation that we had as well. And for anyone listening who's not sure what that's about, it's basically the idea that we've been told, us millennials growing up, that we are so special, and we become very precious in ourselves, in thinking that we are such special and important beings. And I kind of wondered if that had a double effect on us, in a way, that being told that we're special and seeing all of the challenges that are going on in the world, rather than going, oh, well, we're special and we don't have anything to do with this. It's actually, we can actually make a change. So, that's where there's quite a bit of empowerment there, because we've been told that for so long. I do wonder if that's a part of it, and if, there's just a building of, we can do something about this, and just because I am however old, it doesn't mean that I can't make a change. And I think that's a shift as well. I look at my parents, for example, and I know that they've had to work really hard just to get to a point where they feel comfortable in their lives, and they had to, work through jobs that they didn't necessarily like, and this and that, and obviously did so for myself and my sister to get a good education and all of that. And I think that's a very similar story across a lot of my friends, where we've now been able to have that great education, and we're now going, well, we're kind of comfortable and content in our own lives, and we're looking at the bigger picture. There's definitely a lot of shifts happening, I think, within the generation. The young social entrepreneurs, it's a trend.
I think it's a good trend, just as my personal opinion here, no facts, no anything like that, but I think it's a really beautiful trend, because growing up, when I was your age, when I was knee-high to a grasshopper, when I was your age, there was none of that. There was none of this, how can I make a difference? And nobody in my circles was caring about how I could make a difference. It was all, let's get a job, let's get a career. This is what we were taught. We were never told that we could have that ability to make an impact. And I think part of it is also, the world has changed. We're now more connected through social media, and we can see where things need to change. Like, I grew up in the suburbs, so I didn't see the homelessness, not that there was as much then as there is now. And you don't get so much exposure to some of these things, but you could just put on some social media and you're going to see where there needs to be something done. And for whatever reason, and we probably don't know, everyone's going to have their own motives. You guys, I'm saying this in a general term, are putting your hand up and going, well, I'll give it a go.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's true. And I think there's also, in saying that, there's probably more opportunities, not only, possibly with social media and things like that, but to see someone else your own age doing it. I guess it's that whole, you cannot be what you cannot see mentality, that as we're seeing more younger people doing it, more people are becoming inspired to do it. There's more and more, accelerator programs and startups that are getting young people to think about, what is your idea and how are you going to make this difference? And also in schools, they're beginning to actually teach about social enterprise, which I think is really cool as well. So introducing the concept at an even younger age, that now it's not getting to the end of uni and then discovering what a social enterprise is, it's coming, into the discussion much earlier.
I've got so much faith in the future listening to you guys. And I know even people, in my generation, we can make the difference as well. But seeing what is happening out there, I think there's a majority of people doing far more good than what we know. And if you're open to looking, you're going to notice that there are people out there making a difference like yourselves. So what would be in your day-to-day running of a social enterprise? I'm going to ask you a twofold question. First part, what would be your major challenges to keep a social enterprise running? And then what's the best thing about running a social enterprise?
Okay. Challenges. Okay. So challenges is probably the money. So I think that there's a real idea put out there that a social enterprise should be completely self-sufficient, which we are quite self-sufficient. Our cafes can run operationally self-sufficiently, but when it comes to impact and added activities, it's quite difficult to get everything run just through operations. And I guess, an ideal social enterprise might be able to run everything it needs to just on its operational revenue. So, and I think that's a really interesting one, because I had that idea in my head for a really long time. And then I started to go, wait, we are running cafes. We're also employing and training young people from disadvantaged backgrounds. We're also trying to generate a profit to invest into our other projects. And we also need to pay people. We also have people working behind the scenes because we need all of this to be coordinated. And there's a lot more going on than just at your regular cafe down the street. So that's a really big part of it, is, I guess, finding the money, but also, balancing it out and making sure that we're doing the right thing so that we're putting impact into the most efficient sources. But also we believe really in individualized approaches. So we put a lot of resources into each person. So there's a lot of challenges in dealing with those finances. And just how do we make sure that it keeps ticking over, I guess. The best thing is definitely being there with the impact every day. So actually being able to, I know all of our trainees, I get to hang out with them whenever, go down to the cafe and they'll make me a coffee, and I'm actually seeing every week, and every time I see them, I'm seeing their confidence and their skills improve. And it's heartwarming to know that we're actually making a direct impact on young lives. And as we say, we don't work with hundreds or thousands of young people. We work with quite small numbers. But that means we have that personal interaction with each and every one of them, and we get to see where they're going, and that's huge.
But even that thought of, we don't get to work with thousands of people, but it's the ripple effect, isn't it? Just if you can change one person's life, they can go on to change another person's life, and it becomes that ripple effect. So starting small has this really beautiful way to expand out into a community, a country, and then the planet. So what a beautiful thing to be there at the cold front and actually see the change happening before your eyes. Not many people get to see that in their work.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I feel very lucky, but it's something I get to do every day.
So talk to us a little bit more. So you've mentioned cafes. So where are your cafes located?
So we've got a cafe in Brunswick. So that one is called Home.one. And Home.one, it's just next to Anstey Station in Brunswick. So it's a micro cafe. It's got all awesome coffee, snacks, breakfast, lunch. It's a beautiful outdoor area there, and indoor on the weekend. So Home.one has quite a few trainees going through there as well. There's also volunteers who work throughout the week to support the operations. It's a really nice little community down there. Then we have the coffee cart. So the coffee cart Changing Lives. That's at RMIT university in the city. So it's in the RMIT training building. And that's kind of the first base of our training. So it's quite a quiet space, and it's where the trainees start off just to get to learn those initial skills around barista and customer service and things like that. And then we have the Crepes for Change van, of course. So that goes around wherever it needs to be and serves up delicious crepes. And yeah, that's a pretty kind of basic social enterprise model, that one. And we've also got a private coffee cart. So that goes out to mainly corporates and functions and things like that. Serves up great coffee.
So you're a bit of everywhere. It's really great.
Yeah, we're quite spread out actually, which is good though. You know, it means that we can connect with a whole lot of different communities, and, you know, we can be exposed to a lot of different people, and our trainees can travel around, and our volunteers, we have volunteers across all of our enterprises as well. So they can be in wherever they need to be. Someone can kind of be there at the space.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, what advice would you have for somebody, a listener who's sitting here going, and I'm inspired by Tenille, you know, they're thinking, hang on, I want to make a difference. So they've got their 9-to-5 job, and somehow they're thinking, I want to get involved in social enterprise. This is just, you know, singing to my heart. I want to make a difference. What's an advice you can give someone around getting into that space? You know, what would they expect? Because sometimes we hear things go, this sounds wonderful, but with everything in life, there are challenges. With everything in life, there are high points. So what would you suggest for somebody who's wanting to either get involved volunteering or starting one or joining one? What's some real experience you can share?
So I think if you're joining one to volunteer as a team member, that's basically about finding your community, I think, and finding the people that really talk to you, that they're involved with something that you're passionate about. I think being passionate about the cause first and foremost is what's going to keep you there. But for somewhere, you know, like Society Melbourne, we have an amazing team. We've got about 70 volunteers. And for us, for a lot of our volunteers, it's being belonging to that community and knowing what we do more broadly. So I think, yeah, really have some chats with people in the space, or just do your research around what it is, the issue that you want to, or the cause that you are most aligned with. And there's plenty of social enterprises out there with volunteer roles that I think you can get involved in. I think in starting one, again, it's do your research. It's a growing space, and there's a huge amount of support out there at the moment. In particular, the Victorian government have a great amount of support for it. There's a lot of accelerator programs, and those are the kind of programs that are going to put you through the ringer, so to speak, for, you know, 8 weeks or so, and actually help you to work out if it's something that is viable. So and I think start off with a simple idea. Start off with something as simple and as kind of minimal as you can, and test it from there.
Yeah, good. Great advice. Because I know there'll be people sitting here listening and going, you know, how can I get involved? Now, if they can't physically volunteer and they're not interested in, you know, starting one up themselves. Now, you mentioned before, our biggest challenge is money. Are there ways to donate and to gift to social enterprises? Slip of the tongue there. We don't want to donate to social media. We do not.
Good enough.
Social enterprise. Yeah, so is there a way that they can contribute? Because, you know, we can donate to charities, can donate and gift to social enterprises.
Yeah. Generally you can. So it depends on how the social enterprise has been set up. But for example, we are a not-for-profit, so you are able to donate to us. The percentage of social enterprises that I know are also not-for-profits, but most of the time, if you go on a website, if the social enterprise wants donations, they'll have a pretty easy button there letting you do that.
Big flashing sign, donate here, right?
And I think a really cool way to get involved is something like, you know, how we started both the Crepe Van and the Coffee Cart was with a crowdfunding campaign, and that's kind of putting your dollars behind something which is kind of new and innovative and exciting, and you get to be a part of that the starting up of a new social enterprise, and you usually get something little in return, like a few coffees on the house or whatever it might be. So maybe look at that aspect of things as well.
So I'm going to change tactics now, because there's a few things, as I said in the first way you answered it, that I thought, oh, we've got lots of things we can go down here. And I'm going to imagine that now you said you've been in this social enterprise for about 4 years, 3.5, 4 years.
Yeah.
The person you are today is, I'm going to guess, because I didn't know you 4.5 years ago or 4 years ago, is probably remarkably different to the person you were when you started. So what has been for you, what do you think have been some of the benefits for you in getting involved in something like this? How has it changed you? What are you noticing about your abilities and your skills that have changed over time as you've got into this line of work?
Yeah, a lot for sure. I think the biggest would probably be around my confidence and self-belief. So I guess touching back on that millennial concept, the first times that I was walking into meetings with potential partners, I was shaking and almost breaking down and thinking, who's even going to want to listen to a 20-year-old tell them about this idea that they have? I was very skeptical of whether or not anyone would kind of take me seriously, I guess. And that's been a really, big learning journey. And I think for me, it's been, to be honest, a lot about faking it until I make it, going in and pretending that I'm confident as anything, and knowing that I'm completely confident in what we do. It's more just my belief in whether or not people are going to, want to listen and want to be involved. So that's been a huge one. Adapting to that, knowing how to network, that fearful word. It still gets me a little bit, but knowing how important that is at the end of the day to what we're doing, that's been a huge one. I think leadership's been massive as well. As I said, I've kind of just been, I think I was lucky, very lucky at the timing that I got involved, and then being able to just continue to go into leadership positions within the team whilst we were growing. And now, leading a team of, about 70, and most of them 90% volunteers, which is, it's a whole different way of managing, and it's a whole different way of leading a team. So that's been a huge learning journey. And I think, just recently, I think money's come up a couple of times, and it's probably obvious my kind of like slight squirmishness as I talk about money. But I think that's been a really big one as well, is actually trying, really understanding how a business works, because my background is certainly not in business. It's in that community development impact side. So knowing that business isn't an evil word either, that's a really positive thing, and that we can learn so much from the way that businesses work, to make sure that we are sustainable as a social enterprise, and that we're not just trying to kind of get along clawing at whoever might want to help us.
So your answer there around confidence, I'm picturing you, as a young, in your early 20s, going into a meeting with a potential partner or somebody who's going to do some work with you. How were you received? How do you feel? Because sometimes you're not going to know 100%, but how do you feel that you were actually received by these people that you were going into with this idea?
I would guess that probably how I thought I was received was very different to how I was received, for sure. I definitely felt that they were just looking at me going, another one of these young people with big ideas. But to be fair, a couple of those conversations that we had in the early days, those are still our partners today. So surely they weren't actually looking at us like that at all. They were taking us seriously, and most of them kind of remind us on a regular basis how much we inspire them and how excited they are to work with our team of young people, and that excites them, that they can see that that's a part of, you know, where this sector is going and where the social enterprise space is going in particular, but how, you know, both the not-for-profits and funders that we partner with are actually, yeah, they are inspired by that. And that's a really cool thing. And I probably haven't let myself believe that for a while, or, you know, I've just gone, oh yeah, whatever, okay. But to actually realize that they mean that, and that they are looking at, you know, the young people, for example, who are sitting in the hub, who are doing this work, and you know, as you're saying as well, are really hopeful for the future and can see that there's a lot of positivity there.
Yeah, and that's really good, because the reason I wanted to ask that question is because I think there's this belief out there that we've created a self-perpetuating belief that, you know, no one wants to work with young people. But I think you're starting to see that, hang on, that's not true. There's always exceptions to these beliefs and rules we're putting out there. Like, people say young people, they just expect everything, and they're not. No, there's an exception. Look at Tenille. Look at Tenille and the 70 people in your social enterprise that are making a difference. So no, they're not all lazy, and they're not all wanting something for nothing. And then you think about, well, are there older people out there just going, oh, just another millennial coming in the door with some great idea that, you know, really, you know, who do they think they are? They've got no business experience. They have no idea about the world. They haven't lived yet.
Yeah.
There's people out there that actually don't think like that.
Yeah.
They're really excited to have you walk in the door and open their eyes to something new. So
yeah,
I think it goes hand in hand. I think it's not just the millennials that are going to make a difference. I think it's a combination of all the generations realizing the strengths that you have, that self-belief that you've been given, that, hey, you're special, you can do something. When like you said earlier, it has had a positive impact. You're going, well, hang on, I can make a difference. And there are people out there who are doing that. So I think for what you want to deliver, some of it you can't deliver without the help of the older generations, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's not just you, like, we look at you and go, oh, they're making a huge difference. And you're just saying, well, you know, I've had to go and talk to these older people and get their help. So if we've got some people listening, right, let's say we've got some of our listeners and they're in an older generation and they've always had this belief around the younger generation going, well, they can't make a difference. They've got no experience. You know, when you apply for jobs, you know, you need experience in this. What would you say? What would you say to that older generation that still may have their doubts?
Yeah. I think in some way, the older generation do have to understand what you're saying there, that we as the younger generation do need to learn just as much from the older generation. But I think the older generation also have things to learn from us. And I think that can be a really difficult kind of pill to swallow, if you like, or concept to be okay with for the older generation. I think that, you know, knowing that millennials probably do work differently, we do have different expectations about how we'll be treated or kind of what responsibilities we might be given and things like that, but that you can actually take that and use it to really advance your organization, I think, because you've got young people, I know there's a lot of studies around young people wanting to work in an organization that has purpose. So when the purpose is there, we are so driven to work towards it. And I think that's a really big thing that you can take on in an organization that's bringing millennials in, is to say, well, here's the purpose. This is what we're aiming for. And you will have us kind of just flocking and doing everything we can to get there. You know, I think most of us aren't content with the idea of a 9-to-5 work day. Most of us can't switch off, for better or for worse. So we will engage and we will want to really work towards and create innovative solutions to creating that purpose. But at the end of the day, I think that young people also need to not jump the gun. We also need to realize that experience, it does mean something. But also I think our lack of experience sometimes means that we're a little bit less jaded perhaps by certain things, and, you know, we'll come up with new ideas and feel like we have a more kind of open slate to work on.
Yeah. I just think that some of us, I'm saying that, I'm speaking on behalf I've got it completely wrong. So not all of us, but some of us have. And I think there's a really great opportunity right here in this moment in time when we are as a species on this planet to really collaborate and work together. Because I think societies, the earth, everything's just showing us it needs help, but it's not going to just take one generation. It's going to take everyone together to do this. Absolutely. And as you mentioned, you can't do it on your own without the support from the older generations. And if the older generations are going, how do I make a difference? They can't really do it without you guys. Because you really do have this energy that gets linked really tightly entwined with the purpose. I've seen it play out. So I just think it's a beautiful space right here, right now, for all of us to get involved and start making a greater impact on the planet, not just going to a 9-to-5 job just to get some money to buy a house, drive a car, to go on a holiday for 4 weeks of the year, but to go to work however long it takes to make a difference and make an impact to make the world a better place, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely how I see it. And hopefully, more people kind of join on with that idea. I think we've got a good thing going for us.
Yeah. So on that note, how do people get in contact with you if they want to join in and get on board with what you're doing? Where can they find you? How can they reach out? What's the best way for them to get hold of you?
Yeah, sure. So our website is the best way just to kind of check out everything that we do and get a better understanding. So that is just society.melbourne. That is all it is. I know many people ask the question, just that. You can email me. So it's Tenille@society.melbourne. And I'm more than happy to kind of, get in touch with anyone who's interested. Otherwise, check out our Facebook and our Instagram pages, which are the same. Go along to home.one in Brunswick. That's kind of, our most permanent. It's open 7 days a week, so you can always check in there and ask the guys there some questions about what goes on as well.
Awesome. Now I know we have some international listeners as well. So if there's anyone internationally who wants to get involved or create a social enterprise and not knowing how to start up, is that something they can reach out to you for a little bit of, how do I get started? Sort of what's the mindset I need to have sort of feel? Is that something you could help people with as well?
Yeah, absolutely. More than happy to answer any questions like that. I think, the social enterprise space is definitely full of a lot of people who are willing to share their learnings and mentor or whatever it might be. So we've had a lot of help in the past. I'm more than happy to pass that on.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for jumping on board the Alice in Wonderland podcast. I know we probably could have spoken about a whole lot of other things with you and your journey, but I just also want to thank you for what you're doing. I know walking around especially the streets of Melbourne, it's a very different place than what it was, I'd say, even 10 years ago, with the amount of homelessness there. And what you're doing is not just giving people a hand up, you're empowering them for a better future. And I think that's just amazing. I want to thank you for doing that on behalf of the community and people around us. We need to recognize the things that you guys do. And I know that you do it and social enterprises, not out there making corporate wages either. So you're making personal sacrifices to make the world a better place. And I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening in and making it all the way to the end of the conversation with Tenille and myself. I really love the energy of the younger generations and what they're bringing to the world. And I'm seeing it more and more. There are people out there really making a difference. And what happens is, if we get hooked into watching the news or listening to the radio, sometimes we don't hear about these extraordinary stories of people making a real difference and an impact on our world and our society on our behalf. So, I really hope this helps you think a little bit differently about the younger generation and their capacity to make a difference. And I also hope it encourages you to get involved in some way. If you can't physically be there and help a social enterprise, do you have a little bit of your income that you can pass on to them to help? Can you offer a scholarship? Can you offer a little bit of your time? Or maybe it's a resource you can offer them for a short amount of time, because this is your way of also giving back. You will have something within your realm and within your reach that you can help make a difference through these enterprises that are out there at the forefront, making a difference on our behalf. So thank you so much for staying on board the Alice in Wonderland podcast to the end. If you've loved this episode, as I said, give me a like, leave a comment, and I look forward to bringing more extraordinary people into your life in the next episode. Bye for now, and stay curious.
Today is turning into the most curious adventure I've ever had.